Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. In today's coffee shop Wi-Fi episode, I wanted to speak about the nature of the mind and to point out that our minds are a sort of interface. They, in some sense, connect the world to the self or the self to the world. Now, some may argue that the world is already connected to the self existentially, but if we consider there to be more than one type of world, then it's a suggestion of what type of worlds are connecting to the individual self. So think of it this way: when I look at my biological existence, that is an instant connection point between myself and the world. It's like a way human beings are accessing the world is, in some sense, kind of like existing as it. Now, the nature of subjective experience has an ability to organize the world differently, and so this is where the hard problem of consciousness is important to discuss. I want to read something for the viewers. The hard problem of consciousness is a philosophical problem that refers to the question of how and why we have subjective experiences or consciousness. It is called the hard problem because it is seen as being more difficult to solve than other problems related to consciousness, such as explaining how the brain processes sensory information, or how we're able to perceive and understand the world around us. One way to think about the hard problem of consciousness is to consider the fact that we have a subjective experience, such as seeing the color red or feeling pain. There is something it is like to have that experience. This subjective quality of experience is often referred to as qualia. The hard problem of consciousness is the question of how and why we have qualia and how they arise from the brain and its processes. Some philosophers and scientists believe that the hard problem of consciousness may never be fully solved, and that there may be fundamental limits to our understanding of subjective experience. Others believe that advances in fields such as neuroscience and psychology will eventually allow a topic of ongoing debate and research. So what it is, why I'm sharing this with the viewers, it is to tell the viewers that we are considering we have a mind, but there are mysteries that encapsulate the human intelligence. When we wonder about outer mysteries, the unobservable universe and the edge of the world is fascinating. When we wonder about inner mysteries, we're wondering about the nature of qualia. We're wondering about the subjective relationship of the human being internally with its externality. So what it means is, I look at a painting and neurologists can explain how me looking at a painting in an art gallery is going to fire up neurons and different parts of the brain are going to activate. But what neurology can't explain is how I conclude the sensory information. So what it seems to be, or what seems to be going on, is that we're a multidimensional being. We're starting to realize that it was an error to think of ourselves through a singular dimension. life is divided between an existential physical event and an existential objective event, and simultaneously a subjective experiential event. So when I say the mind connects the world to the self, you see, existentially, the world is connected to the self, but the self is identifying with a starting point that is separate from the world, right? Children, there's a reason parents name their children, and why children all over the planet are not named Earth. Do you know? Because we consider a separation from truth. Many spiritual people feel there's a secret truth behind the idea of the soul, but the soul is the separation from the ultimate, technically. So what it means is that think of it this way, from a potential collective field of being, there has arose form. You see, the mind is connecting the self with the world by being able to discriminate how they are separate and how they can interact. You see, there's something ingenious that has happened, whether it's an evolutionary process or whatnot, right? Something ingenious that has happened in nature is that let's say the personalityless forces of nature in the container that we call space. Technically space can be seen as, like, the concept can be void if we just see it as if there's forces interacting with matter and there's no such thing as space. The space is the mirage of the relationship of the force with matter, right? Like, we can have this attitude. But for me, something that's very fascinating about the nature of the mind is that it is here to use time in space. It is here to notice itself changing. And something incredible about this life, something that we're not conditioned, we're not told, but it seems to be the case, that we are conditioned in being individuals that we keep sculpted in our memories and individuation. But as we live life, and especially when you realize the nature of unknown variables in your moment, you're going to see life is a living event, and the world has a soul, but it's not the humanized soul like us. So it's as if it's like imagine an ant wanting to communicate with a human being. An ant can't speak the language of a human being, but an ant can go and interact with the presence of the human being, right? So it's kind of like if the cosmos was an intelligent being, it's not like we can communicate with it, but by being a part of it. And this is where the concept of faith is very profound, because it's as if like the red blood cells in your veins need to have a faith that the whole body will stand. Similarly, the individual requires faith for the existential body, for a sort of cosmic body. So many different types. Of human beings opening their eyes in and to this world. What should be done? So what I'm trying to say is, when you seek knowledge, you are being conditioned to be a noun. But when you seek experiential understanding, there's something different there. You see, it's a matter of texture. How your attention interacts with space suggests how shapes come into form. The mind is a very strange concept, okay? I'm going to read something for the viewers, something about the nature of mind I found. It's important to note that the concept of the mind is complex and multifaceted, and there's no one agreed upon way to divide the mind into specific sections or categories. Different fields and approaches to understanding the mind may have different ways of conceptualizing the mind and its various components. One way to think about the mind is in terms of its various mental processes or functions, such as consciousness, attention, memory, emotion, and problem solving. These mental processes are often studied in the field of cognitive psychology, which focuses on how the mind processes information and how people think, perceive, remember, and make decisions. Something before I read the rest, something important. You see, guys, the way the human mind has tried to make sense of reality is by containing it. It developed language to be capable of subjectively containing objective reality. Okay, but when it comes to subjectivity, it's not just how something physically is connected to a symbol, but in some sense what sort of image does the symbol provide. Like, I don't know how to say it, but like language is filmmaking. Language is like, if you're an editor of a movie, like a film, if you're a good editor, you'll probably be also a good speaker. Why? Because the nature of the mind acts in accordance to events. So think of it this way: the slower your mind, the speed of your mind, the more you actually pay attention to the symbols, right? Like the sentence structure. The faster your mind, the symbol structure, the imagery turns into a film. The advanced human mind should be, in some sense, be like multiple screens. Alright guys, quick intermission, I'll be back for part 2. Technically not a quick intermission.